Okay, wonderful. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Saturdays for Sustainability Learning, and we are again in this today's session. So, we are discussing sustainability, different topics. So, we have the goal to discuss sustainability topic for holistic understanding, trying to understand what exactly are the different concepts and how do we apply it practically. All right. So, if you have joined for the first time, I'll just take around 2 minutes to introduce this initiative and so that we all get on the same page. So this is a mastermind group and which help us for peer-to-peer mentoring, helping each other to understand the concept, solving problems, and inputs and advice from fellow working professionals. Okay, so this is a time investment of all of you, and I can understand it is a one of the most valuable commodity that we all have. So with this 60 minutes, what you can get is learning new concepts every week, networking with fellow professionals, learning career opportunities, and thought leadership. Of course, sustainability is going to grow in the future. So, how do we shape India and the world in sustainable development? So, that is something we would definitely would like to explore through this session. And two important things: the foundation of this session is first is DIKW pyramid. If you know this is data, information, knowledge, wisdom, you can consider it as a pyramid. In today's time, we have more data, more information that we can possibly consume, but what we lack is the knowledge and wisdom that can be only come with experience and the proper understanding, the wisdom part. And that's what we try to do in these sessions, understanding. And that's one of the best way to do this is the discussion, the question and answer. So please feel free to ask question or to pitch in and share your experience. So that's what make it a full understanding, holistic understanding for all of us, right? So every one of us has some part of the truth. So if we can share ours, so we can get the other point of view as well, and that becomes a holistic understanding. So please feel free to jump in wherever you can, and just request if you have registered here so that you will get the WhatsApp group link if you want to join. If not, I always add it on calendar so that it becomes easy for you to track and you get the notifications as well. So if you haven't, so please do so. But if you have done the registration once also, that is enough. No need to register again. Okay. All right. So with this, we are in this week 76. Uh, it's 15th March, right? So we have today's session, and I'm very thankful for Sir Muralidharan sir, who is very kind and he always is ready to conduct these sessions and share his wonderful experience. So today's topic is understanding just transition to address climate crisis. We will try to look at it with system thinking lens, issues, challenges, and maybe some part of solution that we would be discussing in today's session. So it's wonderful, always wonderful to hear Sir the way he explains all the concepts. So without any further delay, I would request Sir, please, sir, the floor is yours. Looking forward for the session.
Thank you, Kulkarni sir. Just let me share the presentation and it becomes easier.
Yeah,
I
yes,
hope.
sir, I can see.
Very good.
I hope others can also see the PPT
Yeah.
presentation. Yeah.
Yes, Dhananjay.
So good evening to all of you and welcome to this session, Understanding Just Transition, addressing the to address the climate crisis. And what we are doing is, how are we going to look into the system thinking and what can be the issues when a just transition comes and challenges in climate action. Just transition, we need to understand it is not a just a transition, what we call in English, just like that we did it. And it is not, it doesn't mean that, but it is just means an orderly, equitable transition. That's what is the objective of that. When the climate crisis has been seen because of the historical inequalities, and also it has snowballed into a real crisis, and it becomes very important for every nation, every state, every province, every citizen to take this issue as of paramount importance and address this. And that is what we are trying to do. And when we look at I just divide it into smaller sections, the basics, and also get into the other areas of system thinking, and also move to some of the successful cases of just transition and issues and challenges we'll discuss. So what has to be understood is that when we talk about just transition for climate crisis, the first thing is climate change is real. Nowadays, using the word climate change itself is prohibited. In some countries, they call it as climate resilience. So this is something which has to be understood. It is real. And every organization or every nation is looking at how to achieve net zero, and that has become a necessity. If we look at India during the last COP, Conference of Parties, the Prime Minister gave a declaration about what we call as the Panchamrit. The Panchamrit declaration includes 2070 net zero for India, and also looking at various other things of a transition process. So under these conditions, transition has become inevitable. It is important, and it is something to be looked at. And the faster the transition happens, the better it is for the world. But when we say faster transition, it equally is important that how the transition takes place, it has to be a justifiable transition rather than looking at it for accelerating the pace where considerable amount of people get impacted during the transition. So when we look at the just transition as a concept or as a topic, it was a labor-oriented concept from the North American unions, and it has found relevance over the period in the climate change context. And what happened in the 1970s when the petroleum economy came in, there were considerable amount of legislations and the oil companies getting into that. And all those industries or the workers who were there working in the industry at that point of time said that if this sort of transition takes place, it may impact them severely. And they wanted some sort of a cushion, some sort of backup to say that they will have a reasonably better life. So super fund and various other things were floated to see to it that the transition is smoother, and even though they lose jobs, they are in a position to have a reasonably decent quality of life. So that was the concept which came way back in 70s and 80s. And in the year 2000, this caught attention, and it has also been captured or taken into the climate change topic which we are discussing. Addressing inequality and bring about fairer outcomes during the transition. So this is the primary objective of just transition, to see that nobody is discriminated, nobody is left out, or some people, some countries with resources, they are able to prosper, leaving the others to lurch, and they are not in a position to manage themselves under the changing circumstances. That and all must be avoided. So that is a justifiable transition, what we are talking about. So it's again maximizing the benefits of climate action and minimizing the negative of the workers and communities. When we say maximizing the benefits of climate action, what we mean is that the climate action or the climate change could be considered as a crisis. But however, it throws up opportunities to see the focus on renewable energy, focus on the tidal energy, rather than depending on coal, petrol, and other forms of energy, and EV vehicles getting into the market. And so it throws up newer technology, newer scientific innovations, and new developments to get into the society. At the same time, when a new technology or anything which gets into the society, obviously there are going to be negative impacts. It may be like, for example, today we talk about AI will kill so many jobs, and the World Economic Forum says that 92 million jobs will be wiped out this year, and next year there is a likelihood of 170 new jobs which are likely to come, and they may be all technology oriented, and all these earlier types of jobs will be wiped out over the period. So maximizing the benefits and minimizing the negative impacts on workers and communities is the primary objective. And recognized that in international level, the just transition was included in the Paris Agreement preamble, and this gets a weightage because of the Paris Agreement. The concept has been taken into consideration in the COP28 itself, when just, orderly, equitable transition in Dubai, which happened COP28, this aspect was discussed, and then it has been brought into limelight now. So what is the definition of just transition? If we see that it is a framework, an approach, what we do that aims to ensure that the shift towards sustainable economy where no one is left behind. So this no one is left behind is a term which already you must have heard many times, because the underlying principle of sustainable development goals, SDGs, the 17 SDGs, is that no one must be left behind. That is the idea behind floating the 17 sustainable development goals. Now, what are those principles when we talk about the sustainable economy? Is that fair and inclusive consideration, so nobody is left out, and the inclusion also is fair. There is no discrimination in the inclusion, taking into consideration the needs of workers, the communities affected by this transition. So in other words, if we are a citizen, you and I, we are equally impacted by the just transition. Either we may be implementing policies, or formulating policies, or implementing policies, or getting impacted by the policies which has been framed by others. So fair and inclusive approach is what is required. Then the social dialogue and engagement becomes very important. Sorry, the stakeholder engagement becomes very important, and it promotes equitable policies that facilitate. So when there is a fairness and inclusivity and the equity is there, it's possible for job creation, social equity, and of course we talk about the environmental justice or climate justice per se. What is climate justice? If we have to look at it, it is that putting equity and human rights at the core of the decision making, to see to it that it is more anthropocentric, to see to it that the rights of the people are taken care of, and it is the equity is also taken into consideration. And to do all this, everybody has to work together. So international cooperation becomes very important. So some maybe the global north may be rich and the global south may not be rich. So the support to developing countries and vulnerable communities, it may be a small island nation in one corner of the world. So they also have to go through this just transition process, otherwise they will be left behind. So the idea behind is that of the mutually beneficial relationship, which is emphasized in the just transition. As we discussed, the concept of just transition has evolved from labor rights movements and environmental justice advocacy happening in 70s and 80s, and the union were strong at that point of time, and they wanted things to be taken into consideration when the transition happens to the oil economy and the change in the regulations, and that brought in this concept of a just transition, as we discussed little while ago. Addressing the needs of socio-economic fairness while tracking climate change. So this is fundamental. The socio-economic fairness is to be taken into consideration. It is not rich, poor, men, women, or it is developed nation, developing nation, or least developed nation, whatever it is, everybody should be taken into consideration when the process of just transition is discussed. So it gained prominence in early 2000, and it has since been integrated into various policy frameworks worldwide. So what are those key principles? If we see that, number one is social justice. Second is economic empowerment. Economic empowerment essentially meaning the jobs are not lost. New jobs may be created. The earning capacity improves in the new domain of activities. Of course, taking into consideration the environmental sustainability, community involvement, as I was discussing earlier also, it becomes very important to see to it that all stakeholders are brought to the table and the issues get ironed out. And finally, the intergenerational equity. The intergenerational equity, all of us understand from the definition of sustainable development, that is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the needs of the future generations. So all these principles will have to be taken into consideration when we discuss the topic on just transition. So these values guide the development policies, how to go about, what is the roadmap for just transition to ensure that community members participate in and benefit from the sustainable economy. So ultimately, that it has to satisfy the needs and expectations of everyone, even though obviously there is likelihood that some of the people may not be satisfied with the changes happening, but majority of the people are in a position to sustain themselves and move forward to see to it that their quality of life is better. So that is the fundamental thing when we look at the principles and values of the just transition. So we have understood what is just transition, how it was born, what is the concept, and what are those requirements to be taken care of. Now, how do we get into the implementation part? So we require a strategy and planning, implementation, and accountability. So when I talk about all these three things, it is applicable to a company which is looking at just transition. It is applicable to a state where they are coming up with the policies. It is applicable to a nation like India, and that is also important. And it is equally applicable to a continent or the world when we talk about the strategy, planning, implementation, and accountability. So it becomes very important to see to it that the system thinking is well understood and we are in a position to evaluate what systems have been made and what is the output of that and what are those challenges because of bringing in newer systems, or it goes through iteration to see to it that what best suits under those conditions. So when we talk about the system thinking, an analytical approach that views problems as a part of the larger interconnected system. In other words, we are not looking at in silos. For example, if we look at the earlier times in 2000 or 2005 sometime, climate change was considered as a very simple system, that global warming is there and that has to be reduced. So that was the idea with which it was approached. And that is how you look at some of the videos or the movies, the inconvenient truth of the US vice president who got Nobel Prize, and also some of the concepts which came in at that point of time. All these things were looking at the system thinking to be a very simple system. But over a period, when the impacts have been seen with extreme weather events, melting of the Arctic ice, and the laws of productivity in companies and various other laws of biodiversity, as we see that. So everything has given rise to a thinking that it is something complex which will have to be looked at as an interconnected system, to see to it that it is not only interconnected but it is complex, where adjustment somewhere may create havoc or a problem elsewhere. So this is something to be managed, to see to it that the system thinking is in a position to deliver the results. So it emphasizes on understanding the relationship between the recognizing the changes and the aspects of system can change far-reaching consequences in others, especially concerning environmental and the social systems. So in this, at this juncture, what I wanted to tell is that we always view the social system as something separate and the environmental system as something separate. But over the years, the thinking has come that both will have to converge. It cannot be in silos, but when we talk about environment, obviously we have to talk about the social aspect of it, or vice versa. So in future, if we see 5 years from now, there is likelihood of these converging together, and we will have always a system thinking which takes into consideration the environment and social systems. So when we look at the interconnectedness of climate system, it was considered earlier as a simple system, what we call as a bathtub model. Some of you may be familiar with this, and some of you may be hearing first. So what is a bathtub model? It is that, imagine a bathtub which is half filled, and from the top the tap is open, the water is coming, and from the bottom the water is taken out. Now we need to ensure that the level of water is at the same level in spite of these two things happening. So it essentially means either you close the tap at the top, or you make the exhaust of the bathtub which is wider, to see to it that the water can flow out. So this is a very simple system. The concept came into climate change. In other words, there has been a CO2 emission to certain million tons or whatever it is in the atmosphere, and more companies are coming up, and more fossil fuels are being used. So this is increasing the quantum of the emissions in the atmosphere, and we are trying to take it out through sequestration or coming up with technology or carbon reduction strategies, whatever it is, and to see to it that the level is brought down to the 1995 or 1990 levels. So this was the earlier concept of a very simple system. But now it has become a very complicated system, where we have to look at the societal aspects, we have to look at the biodiversity aspects, we have to look at endangered species, we have to look at the developmental aspect, etc., etc. So climate systems, when we look at it, when we discuss, they are all highly interconnected with changes in some of the area affecting ecosystem, economies, communities globally. And understanding the interconnectedness is critical for effective decision making in just transition, ensuring comprehensive strategies that consider multiple factors and consequences. So all these things will have to be looked at when we come up with a just transition policy, or try to implement these requirements in the respective country or in the respective organization. And it touches just about every workforce and the community at some level. So it could be the proximity of the company or the neighboring nation, or it could have serious implications in the economic side when they are into exports and other activities. So climate change exacerbates inequality. This is understood. Socioeconomic disparities, if there are, with the within the nation or across the nation, they hinder adaptation. So adapting to the new requirements when the temperature is rising, and we will have to either do the mitigation or adaptation. And if the disparities are there, some countries doesn't have finance, so they will have to, like island nations, they require considerable amount of finance for adaptation. So this is another the policy failures hinder sustainable transition. So this is also seen when policies can be made on paper and they are again made as a regulation. If it doesn't work with the community and people don't accept it, then it hinders the sustainable transition. So how do we apply the thinking of just transition? System thinking and just transition involves creation of holistic approach for climate action. So education sensitization is a must for people to understand that this is a crisis which is there and it has to be addressed effectively. Otherwise, it's a recipe for doom. So integrating social and economic environmental perspectives also is something important, as we have been emphasizing from beginning. So this ensures that strategies are comprehensive and addresses the causes, fostering resilience, adaptability of communities undergoing change. So two aspects become important. One is fostering resilience, that even though a policy is made for just transition, if suppose it fails, and it must be possible for the country, or it must be possible for the company or the organization to rise back, take corrective measures and come up to see to it that they are in a position to manage themselves. Second is the adaptability to the changes. Any change, there is a resistance, and it becomes very important that the adaptation is there amongst the public when transition requirements are proposed. So there are four key features and five principles when we talk about the just transition. So we are diving a little bit deeper into the just transition concept. If we look at first key features are that dealing with bounded rationalities. Bounded rationality essentially means, like if we look at the bounded rationality as an economic concept was proposed by Herbert Simon, who was not accepting the Adam Smith's invisible hand concept. Both of the things we must have heard at some point of time. In other words, Adam Smith said that whatever be the chaos or the uncertainties, this system over a period will come to equilibrium. Whereas Simon proposed the bounded rationality, meaning that we, within the available information, we take decisions taking into consideration our necessities and requirements with the available information. So similarly, every stakeholder will take a decision accordingly, according to the information available, according to the necessities, what is felt by them. So even though the decision may be taken together, the system may fail. In other words, everybody is trying to work, but it results in a failure. So that is what the Herbert Simon proposed of bounded rationalities. So this is something which has to be taken into consideration. Just to give an example, if we look at urban IT worker, the bounded rationality will be, he will be worried about the AI, the job creation or upskilling, and maybe EMI and whatnots, etc., every other thing to have a good quality of life. But an indigenous community which is there, which is impacted by the mining company which is there, their bounded rationality is absolutely different. So when we talk of the climate change, the impacted parties are both the IT employee and the indigenous community. So the policies and the implementation requirements must take into consideration both these people's expectations to see to it that it is reasonably successful. So that is number one feature of just transition. The need to prioritize with complexity and value of pinch points, meaning pinch points are those bottlenecks or troubles which may happen in this, because every stakeholder may think differently, and it becomes very important to prioritize, meaning does it have an economic implication for the country? Does it have an environmental implication? Does it have a governance issue where the policy and implementation will, the monitoring of them will be a challenging issue? So all these requirements will have to be taken into consideration. That is one of the key features of the just transition. The using leverage to get desired outputs. So some of the things may already be there. It could be an indigenous knowledge. It could be the availability of technology. It could be the availability of skilled people, as they say, in few years' time. Europe is getting older. Japan is already very old. Now the younger population is there in India. So they are the people who are going to drive the changes in the world. So this is a leverage to get the desired outputs. And accountability for all shareholders, it is very well understood. And what are those 5 principles of just transition work program? So when it comes to implementation, putting things in place, the World Resource Institute has come up with uh, just transition, or JTWP, which was framed in 2023 and got updated in 24, is that it is a people-centered climate action, which is understood, anthropocentric, as we say, and addressing global inequality and rejecting oppressive global systems. So this has to be understood. For example, the recent CBAM, what is being talked about, or certain requirements which is proposed by the European Union. So this may be very difficult for some of the countries to take care of it. For example, if a CBAM is implemented, it is said that it is going to impact at least 2% of GDP of South Africa. So this is what is the discussion which goes on. But however, Europe is looking at the Green Deal to see to it that they are in a position to reduce the emissions by 50%. So this is something as a thorny issue where things will have to be ironed out. And as you would have read, that some of the CBAM requirements have been reformulated over the period, and we will see such changes happening in future. So channeling unconditional support for developed countries, so that is what is important. Support from developed countries through climate finance or technology or other resources becomes very essential. That is the principle of JTWP. Otherwise, it is not going to work. And creating comprehensive and flexible JT pathways, meaning just transition pathways, is that we are not just taking a road straight. There may be ups and downs, there may be diversions here and there. Ultimately, we will have to see to it that we are navigating in a position to see that we reach the destination of climate justice. So it is not that everything is straight and everybody obeys and everybody accepts this. And that is the real challenge of bringing in a just transition anywhere. So building synergies with other global climate related work streams. So some of the initiatives are also being taken up by the respective countries. So we need to build up some synergies to see to it that this also is captured into the just transition work program. So these are those key features and the principles of just transition. So system thinking, and what are those issues, we have looked at it. What are those issues? Now looking at it, economic, environmental and ethical issues, which we are familiar to with the sustainable development, or what we call as ESG in short always. So what are those economic challenges in the just transition? Displacement of jobs and traditional sectors. So imagine for a second that the just transition is being brought. The petrol pumps are closed. the petroleum refineries stop functioning. Coal plants which generate power, they are all stopped. Now, what will happen to the employees there? What will be the job opportunities for them? So this is a question mark. So it just cannot be with a law or with a sort of a swing that things can be changed overnight. It requires to be done over a period of time. So displacement of jobs in traditional sectors is going to be something causing an economic impact, maybe a loss of job or creation of new jobs with new skills is likely to happen. So that has to be managed effectively. The need for investment in green technologies. Now we see all these EV vehicles and various other drones and other things. Now 31st, we are going to start the hydrogen train. And the minister says he's going to come up with many more trains using hydrogen. So these are green technologies which ensure the economic growth is equitable. So what will happen to the engine driver who was using coal and the diesel? He has to be given some sort of a compensation, or his job will have to be replaced, right? Because he may not be exposed to the new technology, or training will have to be provided. I'm just giving some crude examples for our understanding purpose, but it has to be looked at in a wider perspective. So transitioning workers to new industries requires targeted training programs, upskilling, funding, and support communities at this change. So these are some of these economic challenges wherever the transformation happens. Social equity and justice, if we see that, are central to just transition, which focuses on inclusivity of marginalized communities. So when we say marginalized communities, who are those communities? They may be poor people, they may be vulnerable people, they may be women, or they may be even urban citizens whom we call as urban poor, if we see that. And the vulnerable, marginalized communities may also be us, right? For example, if we see that in 2050, as they say, Bangalore as a city will be deserted for the simple reason there is not going to be enough water at all for public with the growth which is happening. So this has been projected by not simply a fiction, but this has been projected by the various models, the requirements, etc., the population increase, everything. So how are we going to give water, being a human right? Providing a safe water is a human right. So this is something, the social equity and justice becomes very important. And it addresses the historic inequalities, ensuring that everyone, regardless of background, that's what I was emphasizing earlier also, has access to the benefits of the economy. Be it a poor, be it a forest dweller, or be it an urban engineer or anybody, well-to-do or not well-to-do, everybody is able to enjoy the benefits. And this requires deliberate policy decisions to uplift the affected population. So the policy, what is framed, just cannot be for a transition, but also it must enable those people below to be uplifted, the affected populations, because of the climate change crisis. Environmental concerns, we all of us are aware of it. And recently in 2025, couple of days, they have prepared a report. The recent environmental crisis because of climate change, a big document has been released now, which is talking about the challenges which are likely to happen from 2025. So ensuring that new initiatives do not cause any harm to ecosystem and biodiversity. So this is something which has to be taken into consideration. So not only we are looking at people, the ecosystem, but also the biodiversity, the species, and also the other systems, mangrove systems, or we have the ocean and any other system which is there. These are all given equal importance for just transition. So it also includes addressing pollution, climate resilience, sustainable use of resources. So this is very important when we look at it. Now, water is a natural resource. Now it's becoming a big problem, and it is likely to become a greater problem in the days to come during summer. So utilization of water is something very important. So like that, we have minerals, we have coal, various other natural resources which are there. If we look at, for example, a car manufacturing company like Audi or advanced car Tesla, they use all these minerals which are the energy transition minerals. And even for making the green hydrogen, we require these energy transition minerals. So this is 70% is held by China, 52% of processed is held by United States, and whatever is pending or balance is with India and other countries. So we are the fifth nation to have these minerals. Now, if we want to look at the development under those circumstances, will it be just transition, which is possible? That is a question mark. So unequal division or distribution of natural resources is something to be taken into consideration. So highlighting the importance of protecting environment and implementing equitable solutions. So what are those challenges faced? If we look at it, policies, the people themselves, the stakeholders, aspirations, expectations, and requirements, processes. How are we going to do? What is the monitoring, reporting, verification? As everybody says, MRV in various standards, the processes which have to be adopted for just transition. And of course, planet must be taken into consideration. Planet meaning the earth, as they say. We don't have planet B. Whatever happens here will happen, and that is to be saved. So that is why this becomes a challenge under these circumstances. Policy governance hurdles, if we look at it, stem from lack of coordination from stakeholders, unclear regulations, political resistance, of course, not to leave corruption is a bigger problem when we look at the policy implementation part of it. Effective frameworks are needed to align the local, regional, national policies, fostering. So there has to be a greater coordination. It cannot be that the regional law is one and the national policy is something else and the international requirements are something else. It may not be in a position to give the desired result. So fostering support for environment, for equitable climate action is what is desired with the just transition. The second important thing is the stakeholder engagement, as we discussed. The engaging communities, business, non-profit organizations, they have their own interests, their own motives, their own aspirations. And there, fostering the collaboration to ensure that the needs of those affected are heard. So this is another challenge if we look at it, because many brains give many opinions, and many brains may not accept one point of view which is put forward. So that is clear. So compromise, discussion, everything, the debate will have to go on to see to it that does it do good for the planet at large. So building trust and maintaining open lines of communication facilitates successful transitions. I will show an example in the end about this building trust and maintaining open lines of communication. Then you will be able to appreciate what I am talking about. Resistance and conflict, of course, is always there, because some people also believe that in spite of all the information, scientific information, they feel that the climate change is not there. It's not real. It is just made up, and it is not going to have that much impact. Extreme weather events are just happening because of the changes, and we are not likely to see a sea level rise over a period. So many questions and so many doubts are there. So addressing these challenges involves actively listening to the concerns, negotiating, and finding a common ground. So this is a fundamental thing when we look at the stakeholder engagement and coming to not a compromise, but looking into coming to a common approach which will be followed. So conflict resolution and strategies are needed to navigate different perspectives which are likely to be there between nations, or even within a nation, between the states, or even within the state. It could be from one location to other location. So what I meant to say is that when we talk of just transition, it is not a think global and act local. It may be think local, act local, which is good for your area, which is good for your territory. It could be think global, act local. That is what is there for nation. You look at it and then act locally to see to it that. So the issues may vary, the intensity, severity may vary, the aspirations may be different. All these aspects will have to be taken into consideration. Now let me come to some of the successes and failures, what I just wanted to say. Now you will be in a position now to appreciate those challenges when we talk on the concept of just transition, which has got itself embedded in the preamble of Paris Agreement. So it is something which will have to be taken into consideration. The how of it is what matters, and that is the real challenge for us, be it a nation, be it an organization, or be it a state which is looking at just transformation, to see to it that the people there are in a position to be safe, and also to see to it that they are in a position to continue their lives in spite of a crisis which has come up. So successful transition, just transition, can be found in various regions and global this thing, showcasing initiatives that balance ecological integrity with the social equity. Both these things are taken into consideration. For instance, cities have invested in renewable energy, what we see, and India has been one of the forerunner, and they have achieved certain targets, which is commendable, while providing retraining opportunities for affected workers, demonstrate the effective collaboration and foresight. Some of the typical examples, if we see, Germany, for example, as a country, Europe, it's a leader with the renewable energy, particularly solar energy. They are trying to phase out all these coal-fired plants, and they are absolutely clear. Any citizen is clear how they are going to achieve it by 2045. So that sort of a transparency, communication, and the enthusiasm to move with the just transition is there. So this is something as we can say, a small success story or a case with the just transition process. Scotland has implemented a Scotland Commission for Just Transition, wherein they are advisory board. They look at all these aspects, whatever is happening within the country with regard to the changes for bringing in a transformation, and they publish reports of the progress. So this is an initiative which is being taken there, which is working. A fair transition to net zero is their objective, which seems to be working till date. Canada task force, it has been interesting that some of the coal mines, when they were closed in Alberta and other places, what they did was to reskill and upskill the people so that they became employable. So in spite of the coal mines getting closed, the people, the workers and the communities, they were able to manage themselves and go for new jobs, which again is an example of the success story or a success case. Similarly, we have a lot of cases like Collie, Collie, coal mine in Australia. This is the recent case that they have closed, and that has been taken into consideration as a successful case of just transition. So we have some examples which are there across the globe, And of course, it becomes challenging when it comes to a very large country like India. So that has to be accepted. So importance of early engagement with communities, transparent communication, adaptive learning is very important. Neglecting social dimensions or rushing into implementing the changes. This is another thing. What we talk climate crisis as only an environmental crisis, not bothered about the social dimension of it. That is not going to work, and that has to be taken into consideration. For proper planning can lead to backlash and unsuccessful outcomes. So transition in and transition out. So transition in means the coming in of new technology, coming in of new skills which are required, the new way of working, new types of jobs. All these are transition in. Transition out, meaning that fossil fuels are going to be out, the traditional jobs are going to be out, and the old way of working, whatever we have been doing over the years, is going to be not there, and they will all become defunct. So this is something to be matched to see that effective management of economic, social, and environmental issues. So this is what is being talked about. For example, transition in, if we look at it, everybody talks about renewable energy through solar. Now, the question being asked is, what will happen after the life of the solar panels is over, after 25 years? So we are going to have some 50 million tons of these useless panels, which they cannot be processed or they cannot be buried, and they will have to go to a landfill. So are we creating a disaster for future? So this is one of the questions being asked. So now the thought is on circular re circular form of the renewable energy. That concept is coming, and the circularity is taking prominence in addition to providing the renewable energy, etc. So all these things are coming up, so it has to be viewed in a broader perspective. So when it comes to policy, resources, and governance, it becomes very important that every country has a long-term strategy. And when we look at the UNFCCC, they have indicated that it has been only given by 52 countries, and it has been ratified, who have ratified the Paris Agreement. And this is something which is pending from most of the countries. What is the path they are going to take? What is the sort of an approach they are going to take for just transition? If they don't take just transition, there will be cross migration from one country to other, or there may be chaos within the countries themselves. So that is why Paris Agreement talks about nationally determined contribution, what India has also committed, if we see that. And if you really look at what is a nationally determined contribution, it is the bread and butter of Paris Agreement, that every nation, they give a report to the UNFCCC on the progress made, what are the challenges, and how they are going to overcome. So 47 NDC have detailed concrete the transition policies, just transition policies. The Transition Plan Task Force TPT disclosure framework is being prepared, and it gives emphasis on the ambition for a systemic approach. So that's what we have been talking about it. So the frameworks which are evolving, which are likely to come, will take into consideration this aspect of JT into it, or they will embed those requirements to see to it that it is justifiable in the context. Resources, when we look at it, climate financing is very important. As we discussed, developed countries to finance the developing countries. And if we look at it, 42% of climate financing is by United States. Now, recently, this financing, whatever is there, leave aside the USAID, the other things which have been there, they have all been stopped. So this is created little bit of a trouble as to how to go about. But on the other side, countries like Sweden, they are increasing the contribution in the Global Climate Fund. So all these things are happening, and hopefully some new sort of a framework or new sort of an approach will come up, as we see in climate financing. Other instruments like green bonds, various other the financing schemes will have to be brought in. Technology and collaboration is very important. People who don't have technology, for example, carbon capture and storage. If we don't have technology, like Denmark, they are pioneers. Norway, they are pioneers in this carbon capture, and they have already implemented and they are showcasing the success of the carbon capture and storage. So technology collaboration becomes very important. Upskilling, no doubt, it becomes very important. So when such policies are put into place, what we require is compliance mechanism. Are we going to come up with new regulations or modification of the existing regulations to bring in the JT into consideration? What sort of reporting will have to be done? It cannot be simply a sustainability reporting, verification, etc. It has also to consider the just transition aspects being built into that. And oversight mechanism, what is the way, like greenwashing and every other aspects are being talked about? How are we going to avoid to see to it that whether it is a verification process or it has to be enforceable in some way, all these aspects are being thought of when it comes to the JT. So we are at the crossroads when we look at it. Like when MDGs were there, Millennium Development Goals, in 2000, the United Nations came up with a 30-year program as SDGs with the 169 indicators and 17 goals. So what we find as on date is that many of these SDGs have not been achieved by countries. Some have progressed, some have gone into the reverse direction, perhaps for various reasons. Maybe COVID could be one of the reason, or the economic issues in various countries has resulted into this, but the progress of some level of uncertainty is there. And the just transition linkage to SDGs require a greater understanding of systemic effort. Now, what is being talked about is that climate crisis is an environmental issue, that is SDG 13, and this will have an impact on the jobs, the decent work, that is SDG 8. So always there is a linkage between 13 and 18 and it revolves around it. But we have to look at the ocean, we have to look at the poverty levels, we have to look at the social requirements. Every other aspect will have to be taken into consideration. So this will get evaluated as we come to 2030, when what has been achieved out of SDG will be evaluated. The thing is that in spite of making an effort and at 2030 the achievement is not there, what for SDGs were made? So that could be a very fundamental question. So this is something, that's why I tell that we are at the crossroads. Now, when such a thing is happening, what the premium, the central bank, all the big brains of the financial system, they sat together and they called the climate scientists and the network of greening financial system. So they formed and called them, because this may have repercussions with, if there is a extreme weather event, then they will have to, insurance will have to be high. If some loan is given and the country is unable to repay the loan, or the person or the organization is unable to pay the loan, it has to be written off. So we have so much of issues coming into that. So they called the climate scientists and they thought about the scenario, what will be there between 2030 and 50. So they came up with 7 scenarios. One is orderly, meaning everybody understands and everything goes fine. Even if that is the case, then meeting 45% of reduction is only possible. Reduction means the reduction in the emission levels. If it is disorderly, we are going to have a hothouse world, which is going to be hotter beyond 2 degrees. Too little or too late, countries are taking their own time, sweet time, to decide, no, no, we will postpone it, we'll come up with new policies. Then it is dangerously close to horizon. Some countries prosper, other countries are just bystanders watching what is happening, or they don't act. And the last thing of delayed transition is that point of no return. It is likely to go up to 3 degrees or so, and that is going to create more problems. What is it that is going to create? It is what we call as the 6th extinction, that 60% of the species in the earth will all vanish because of the climate change happening, because of the climate crisis. So this is a book which has been written by Elizabeth Colbert some years ago, a wonderful book which details out what are all those situations which we may expect. So we are at crossroads, and if we go to the left, it's going to be, that is, nothing is done, then it is a 6th extinction which is imminent. But if we go to the right, it is just transition. This is the latest book by John Morrison from Institute of Human Rights and Business, which has come up in January or December. And he lays out approach, what has to be taken, discusses the challenges, what we have been discussing in detail, and what can be the impact on the community, what can be the impact of indigenous people, what is the impact on technology, the economic environment, and the social context. Everything is there for us to look at it. So I just wanted to end up with this. The Amazon forest fell. When we talk about just transition, this was a news which was there a couple of days ago. The Amazon forest fell to build the road for climate change. This was a news by BBC, and they just made a road through the Amazon forest, which is the lung of the world. And this was there. And today afternoon, I saw the news that it is a fake news. Okay, so this is another issue. I just kept it like that, because many things may be happening, many things may not be happening. And if there is a fake news, that creates a lot of impacts when it comes to just transition part of it. So when we talk of just transition, it is crucial for a safe future. Understanding, appreciating a system thinking is must. Disclosure, certification are not enough. What we are doing now, scope 1, scope 2, all these things are fine. Okay, you can declare that, but the proof of the pudding is that to see to it that does it enable just transition. And expect new frameworks with embedded JT requirements. Now the future standards, whatever ISO or social accountability or environment, whatever standards are there, they must have these just transition requirements embedded in that, or at least give reference to those issues which the standard is trying to take care of it. And of course, finally, uncertainties still remain. We don't know what is the future. 2030, are we going to achieve, or 2050? We cannot imagine. So many conflicts, so many issues, economic, environmental, and so many uncertainties happening. So we are at crossroads. And unless we address the just transition as a process and come up with feasible solutions, it's going to be challenging time for all of us. Okay, so thank you for this. And I've taken a little bit of time more. Sorry about it. And
No
maybe we can
problem.
have a couple of minutes for
Yes,
questions. Anybody? Dhananjay sir, any
yes, yes.
questions?
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for the presentation. It was excellent. Yeah. So we have few questions, sir. I'll just read it from the
Please.
comments as well. So one question is, and I'm sure many of these questions might have been discussed during the
Yeah,
presentation also. So the just transition, whether it's just a government policy concept or it can be implemented by individual organizations.
it can
That's one
be
question.
implemented by individual organizations also. It is like, for example, SDG.
Hmm.
SDG is it a governmental concept or is it a organizational concept? So many of the organizations also do the SDG reporting, right?
Right.
Yeah, just 1 minute, just a
Yeah,
minute.
sure. Sure, sure, sure. So what we can see is, as SDGs can be, let's say it is driving change from maybe at an international level, two national levels and two organizations, and then organizations and schools can drive these implementation of SDGs. So
Yes,
similar way, if organizations could uh,
yeah,
take the just transition as seriously and prepare people for the coming time, so I guess that can be done.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So next question is, sir. So what kind of jobs? So with the same question coming forward,
Mm,
so what kind of jobs that this just transition framework could provide
yeah.
for NGOs, government, and private sector? So is there anything that you could see in this?
It could be on human rights impact assessment, which is being
Mm-hmm.
done. It could be on the social impact assessment, looking at the society with the transfer of technology which is coming in. It could be education, which has to be done. It could be sensitization if it is a remote area and they don't understand anything about climate change and whatnots. And this is also being done in one of the this thing. The indigenous communities were educated in this and in the African country, and this has resulted in a change, and they are in a position to adapt themselves to new requirements.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody has a chance, everybody has a role to play. It's going to be new, it's going to be innovative, and it's going to be sometimes challenging. Not that everything gets wiped out.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. So what I understood, sir, from this discussion is, so let's say whatever things that work for last 100 or 150 years, 200 years may not work for future because the
Absolutely.
situations have changed. So to
Absolutely.
adopt for the new situation, we need to transition. So that's the important thing.
Right.
So we have one more question related to this is, what kind of financial support do developing countries need from rich nations to
Yeah.
make this just transition fair and effective? So what
Absolutely.
support?
So that is what we nowadays talk about: climate finance
Hmm.
and also sustainable finance. And so they are coming up with newer instruments for financing, like a green bond and various other instruments which are there. And even, for example, our own country, like NABARD and other people, they are looking at some of those initiatives, though not directly called as a just transition financing or climate financing. It is all
Right.
being thought of. And when the carbon framework and other things comes, the
Hmm.
carbon exchange and the rule comes
Hmm.
into India, obviously countries will require financing. So new instruments are likely to come. So as of
Right.
now, the funding is from abroad, which is there, right, from various countries. So either to their suppliers or either to whoever wants it through agreements, etc. But it is likely to go up. Otherwise, it is not going to work out. For example, Germany has allocated 100 billion euros only to address the just transition. So how it is going to utilize and what are the things likely to happen, we need to wait and see.
Yeah. Great. Great. And I would also request others for your questions. Meanwhile, Murli sir wanted to share two good resources, and I guess one of the comment is regarding what are the good resources that we all can read to
Yeah.
understand this. So Murli sir, you want to comment it? I'm sharing it
Yeah.
on the screen.
Because
Yeah.
I didn't talk about just transition in India. Okay. Somebody may be having curiosity. Are we discussing these things or is it alien? to India. So these are some of the documents, like the Niti Aayog has come up with how they are going to interministerial committee on just transition from coal, because obviously they will have to go out of coal. But that is, it has been made now, but we have enough number of years. 2070 is the target, and what is likely to happen we don't know. And till that time, whether this is going to be a live document, we will have to wait and see. But I just wanted to inform that yes, India is also taking this issue in a way it is feasible for them, are coming up with policies addressing the just transition. Yeah.
And there is one more report from iForest.
iForest, yeah, that is
Yeah.
about the this thing about just transition and inquiry into challenges and opportunities post coal future. So this has again been documented. It's available, freely downloadable, and it gives everything what we have discussed about the coal mining issues and whatnots. But you all will know practically the coal industry is not simply easy organization. You have a Coal India, which is a Navaratna type, a very huge mammoth organization. And tomorrow you say, I'm going to shut down this. It is not possible. You have coal mafias, if you remember, in Dhanbad and various other
Yeah.
this. How are we going to contain them? How are we going to divert them? It's a challenging thing. Societal issues. So we have to look at it from the various angles to come up with the solution to these things for a just transition.
Yes, agree. And as you said, it's stakeholder, multi-stakeholder approach. So without
Yeah.
that, it's not possible.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I would request everyone, if you have anything to add to this, if you have any question, please unmute. We would love to hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Siddesh, please.
Yeah, so my hi, thanks, Murli sir, as always. You, you, yeah. So I just wanted to ask about, that uh, when it comes to the top leadership or politicians, we are not
Yeah.
saying even the word climate change uttered,
Yeah.
or the climate crisis is there, and there is and media is also not covering this, so
Yeah.
much less awareness. So do you think if these pillars of democracy which we have, right? Justice system, everything, if they are not aligned to this just transition,
Correct.
is it possible for us to actually achieve just transition? So
See, as you see that, as I told you, we are dealing with the minds of the people and their aspirations or requirements. Okay, it could be protectionism from one side, it could be saving their country, or whatever be their policies and other things. But what I meant to say is, this is it's not something framed by a bunch of people. If you look at IPCC, it has some 500 scientists or even more who are the real experts in the world, and they say that this is what is happening. And till now, till the fifth report or whatever has been made, everything has proved to be mostly accurate. Okay, now they are going to come up with the next report, and that is started. So we will be in a position to know. So the realization will come, if not today, maybe later, and obviously everything will fall in line. That is why it is, as I told you, one of the scenarios is too late, okay, too slow or anything, but it won't stop. Things will change and things will happen. It's only, it may take time, and it should not be too late. That's it.
Yeah.
I hope
Thanks.
I was okay.
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
thanks,
Thanks.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So others, please, if you have anything to add, please you can. One question from my side, sir, would be,
Ah, yeah.
of course, problem is there.
Yeah.
What is the solution? Maybe at our personal level. So what you can recommend all of us? What one thing, simple one or two things that we can do
One
so
of the
that we can
things,
become a part of
yeah,
solution?
one of the things I would say basically is that do not view climate crisis or climate change as an issue which is purely environmental. this is still there in our minds. Okay, if it is very hot, oh, 2 degrees hot. I mean, today temperature in Aurangabad was 42 degrees. Okay, so I have to use AC and whatnots and other things. Look at the issue with people, productivity goes down. Look at the issue with water scarcity, it goes down. So one of the things is that to have a broad minded thinking in this and educate as much as possible. See, that's all we can do. We can't be, and if we are in the decision making level, we could take some decisions which balances these things. It's not a hire and fire thing which is likely to work. We have to look at things differently. At the same time, we are not mellowing down. Oh, this fellow is poor, he cannot survive, we have to do something, and what that may not work out under the circumstances. So we have to have a balancing which is to be done. So this is a very, very, as I told you, a complex system. Approach will have to be multidimensional, innovative. So the more we think, the more we learn, and then it becomes easy to adopt or implement. Yeah.
Agree.
So at least we will be satisfied. We have done some contribution in this area. That's it.
Yeah.
Dhananjay, can I add something?
Yeah, please, please. Yeah.
Being an elected representative myself at the local self-government, I have observed, I am professionally an educationist, okay? And I have observed that nothing matters more than money. That's because the educated are very, should I say, laid back, or just depending on the elected representatives. I don't think that should be the case, because in today's generation, there is so much of social media awareness. There is so much of, you can write emails right up to the environment cell and to the PMO, to the CMO, and every person in charge. And if your representatives are not doing it, I think we might as well form a group and do it. Because my screaming, my yelling, and not yelling actually, any kind of discussion I take on the environment or anything, iski teacher giri chalu ho gayi. This is what I'm told. So that is why what I feel is, catch them young. I always say, go to the
Yeah.
school, make them aware, tell the children how important it is. I go
Yeah.
to the extent of saying that during COVID, the corporation staff of the health department, they were distributing dustbins and all that. And one particular CBSE school, it's run by Christian missionaries. So I was told to come and help them out because they were not getting entry. Then I went, and the principal, I didn't know it was going live. So there were those small primary children, because it was late by the time the staff came. And I told them, see, every time your mummy and daddy worries you, study, 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 they want good marks. Now I'm giving you a chance to test your parents. Every day go and peep into the dustbin. See if your mummy or your daddy is mixing the waste. You tell your parents that all dry waste must be separate. Even just last week, no, week before last, I went to a school, international school, and I told the principal, it's coming in my ward. So I said, tell your children once a week, bring the plastic waste. Immediately, I contacted the sanitary inspector. I told him, you're going to collect every Friday from the school, and dustbins and all. Oh, madam, dustbin kuturanu. I said, nothing doing. Okay. Then the principal agreed. She said, madam, I will provide. Very good idea. I said, let us teach them that this is
So this is
not
this is what, madam, I
yes,
talked to you earlier. The concept was think global, act local. Okay.
local. Yeah.
Now it is think local, act local. Okay. Also think global and act local, both put together.
Yes, both.
So, and what you are talking is about the intergenerational equity.
Yes.
Okay, the younger generation will have to be informed about it, the challenges they are going to face as they grow up, and this is something the education becomes very important.
Very, very important. True.
Yeah.
Today, I just spoke to a foreigner, a senior, religious. She's almost 80. So I told her this is happening. I showed her one video. I said, I'm taking children to clean the beaches and all. and they find such a lot of plastic. Then when they poke, then I make them take an oath. And I used to, oh, this is happening, and no, they were packing some nice gifts to the, to the children. It's a children's home. I said, say no to plastic, avoid plastic. She said, oh, this is, it looks neat and this and all. Then I told her, sister, this is what we are supposed to do. As you said, no, some of them are just saying that it is, people are saying it is, happening. It's the earth, can take care. It's a regular phase and all. So I was shocked coming from her like this. And the Pope's document of Laudato Si says, care for our common home. The entire planet is our common home. I tell students, every step you walk is your home. Don't think you throw chocolate wrappers, biscuit wrappers here and there, people spitting and all that. I said, you're dirtying your own home. This is your own home. We are going to stay. So,
these are all micro processes which will have to be taken into consideration for achieving things at a macro level.
But also, what about the pollution in the skies due to the flights?
Yeah, they are coming up with that. Now, if you see, they are looking at hydrogen fuel flights. Maybe in 5-10 years, you will find the petrol, this thing will go off.
And even I guess I read last week only, India is going to run a train on hydrogen.
This 31st.
Yeah.
31st,
Yes. So this month itself. So
yeah,
but of course, technology is not the solution, that we all agree. So maybe changing human behavior, that's a big issue.
And also, as Murali sir was pointing out, right, at one point we are having this hydrogen train, or all this Vande Bharat Express and AC trains, and at the same time we are saying the poor people traveling toilet. So it's not just transition, right? It is one way we feel, we are doing hydrogen, but at the same time we are seeing this happening.
True.
So yeah,
there's a big gap. There's a big barrier between the rich and the poor. It's extending bigger and bigger.
It's there throughout the world. Okay. So it's something to be bridged reasonably, only for our own survival. So that's the message.
Feeling sorry for the younger generations growing up.
No, they may be innovative. You don't know. They'll come up with solutions.
Nature, universe teaches.
Yeah.
It's need of the DR, like whatever.
Correct. Okay.
Very nice presentation. Very nice presentation.
You.
Excellent. Very nice.
Thank you
so much.
Right.
Yeah, so, sir always saves our time. So this much information, if we wanted to get, so maybe 5 days, 7 days are not enough. But sir could condense all the. It's like a Samudra Manthan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then please send the recording. I would like to go through the recording 2-3 times.
The interest is that to give, as we say, maximum information within the time. So it gives linkages, references, etc. for someone to go through and dive deep and understand things more, should they have interest. Right. So
Thank you.
Now you will hear everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere, for me, in a couple of years, everywhere you will see just transition. So at that point of time, remember this talk which we have today. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely. So before ending this session, so thank you so much from all of us. But if you want to summarize your learning of all this 1.5 hours, you can do so. Just 1 or 2 lines. That would be helpful for others as well, those who will watch the recording. So I'll just pass on to you if you want to. Otherwise, that's okay. No problem. If anybody would like to add. Achyut, you want to add something? I can see you are unmuted.
Oops, sorry, that was my mistake. But I just wanted to, like I mentioned in the comment, Murali sir, this is a great masterclass. It would have taken ages for us to get to this knowledge in this small pack, in this condensed package. Thank you so much for doing this all, and also for the resources that you shared. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm there to help Kulkarni always.
Kulkarni, you're doing a cool job.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
If anybody would like to share something, if you think we haven't heard your voice, yes, Siddesh,
So
please.
one line, if I have to say that, the learning we should all take is that when it comes to just transition, we should not see the transitions in isolation, but as a systemic, with a systemic eye, look at multiple parameters at the same time,
Break the
rather than an
silos.
isolation. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, agree.
Okay.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you so much, everyone, for your valuable time. And let's connect next Saturday. Good night. Have a
Yeah.
great weekend. Thank you.
Good
Bye.
night. Thank you.
Good
Bye-bye.
night,
Good night.
everyone. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.